The Mahindra Scorpio is doing very well in South Africa. In fact, it was the country's car of the year in 2023. Namibia, that lies to the north of South Africa, has always been Land Rover and Land Cruiser country, with the latter being more popular. There is a saying that echoes around the brotherhood of off-roading. If you want to go anywhere, take a Land Rover. If you also want to come back, then take a Land Cruiser. Always on the lookout for new and exciting challenges, and to get a foot into the door of Namibia's 4x4 fraternity, Mahindra Adventure planned a 13-day expedition in Namibia. Ideally, the expedition should have started in Windhoek, the capital of Namibia that has an international airport. But the Scorpios were in Cape Town, so that's where we started and headed north over 2 days towards the Orange River. We've driven north from Cape Town and now we are poised to cross the border into Namibia. The last few kilometers have been this crazy off-road driving with lots of shifting sand, and that's the Orange River over there. That forms the border of South Africa and Namibia. So we are in South Africa, but there across the river lies Namibia. So we're not going to cross the border today. It's quite late in the day and border crossing is going to be iffy. But tomorrow morning we're going to have an early start and get across the border into Namibia. Early start this morning, it's 5:45 and we are gunning towards the Namibian border. The science behind it is that the shift of the officials changes at 6 a.m. in the morning, and so they are in a hurry to get home. So they'll quickly clear us through. At least that's the logic behind it. Let's see how it goes. Fingers crossed. The officials at the border didn't seem in a particular hurry to get home. So it took us 45 minutes to get stamped out of South Africa and stamped into Namibia. This was still quite quick considering we were 18 people and 10 cars. Even though we crossed over into Namibia now, it was still another 800 clicks to Windhoek over 2 days via Marienthal. The tarmac B1 that we drove all the way to the capital was a smooth 2-lane highway with a speed limit of 120 km per hour, which none of the local traffic seemed to be adhering to. Little sedans packed to capacity would overtake a convoy that was travelling at the maximum speed limit. We were also treated to a spectacular sunset, a characteristic of the African continent thanks to the dust hanging in the air that refracts sunlight to paint the sky yellow, orange and red. A relaxed afternoon and evening at the Arab Bush Travel Lodge in Windhoek, and the convoy hit the tarmac again, onwards to Swakopmund. We switched over from the B1 to the B2 at Okahandja, where Hardy excitedly halted the convoy in front of Namibia's most famous biltong shop, Savannah Biltong. Biltong. This is Southern Africa's most loved snack. Like how we have chakli and chiwda, they have biltong. So basically biltong is just strips of meat that have been applied with a spice mix and then left out to dry. And it can be any meat. It can be beef, or it can be Springbok, or it can be Gemsbok, eland, kudu. This one is kudu and it is delicious. Swakopmund was an introduction to Namibia's famed skeleton coast, the nemesis of ships, and in Bushman lore, the place God created in anger. I was first introduced to Swakopmund and the skeleton coast by Wilbur Smith in his book The Burning Shore, set in 1917. In it, he describes Swakopmund as a startling touch of Bavaria transported to the southern African desert, complete with quaint black forest architecture and a long pier stretching out into the sea. Over a century later, that description still rings true. In fact, we all had dinner one evening at Jetty 1905, a fine dining restaurant at the end of the aforementioned pier. After days of convoy driving on the tarmac, most of us were chomping at the bit to be let loose with the Scorpio in the environment that it thrives in. Tire pressures were reduced and the halters were thrown off, and everyone set off for a jolly in the sand. So this is Swakopmund on the Skeleton Coast in Namibia. In trying to create drama for the cameras with the wheels throwing up ripples of sand, I got a bit carried away. This resulted in my front right tire coming right off the rim. At Swakopmund, we finally left the tarmac behind as we drove north along the Skeleton Coast past one of the many shipwrecks. This one is the Zila, a fishing trawler that floundered here on the 25th of August 2008, interestingly on its way to Bombay. Then we headed into the breathtaking region of Damaraland, situated to the east of the Skeleton Coast. I realized that Eat My Dust has a very literal meaning here, especially if you're driving in a convoy. The White Lady Lodge that is nestled at the foot of the Brandberg Mountain is an actual oasis in the desert with luxurious rooms, a swimming pool and a bar and a dining area. Local folks liven up the evenings with folksy song and dance. My colleague MJ found himself caught up in the infectious energy and enthusiasm of the latter. Damaraland is also an internationally recognized dark sky reserve. For this reason, it was worth the effort of waking up in the middle of the night and stepping out into the cold after the moon had set to shoot the stars. The next morning we were up before sunrise. Behind me is the Brandberg Mountain. At 2573 meters, it's the highest mountain in Namibia. The reason most people come here is to see the way the mountain lights up at sunrise or sunset, and that's why it's in the local language it's called the Fire Mountain. I thought I'd soak in the pool since we had 2 nights at the White Lady Lodge, but news came in that a herd of elephants had been spotted in the Ugab riverbed. So this morning at the White Lady Lodge, one of the guards had some information about elephants that had been spotted yesterday. So right now we are on a drive to try and go look for them. We drove around for quite a while, following Pachidam poo and footsteps. Along the way, we came across a pair of ostriches strolling through the scrub plain. When we finally came up to the herd, there was excited chatter over the radio and a flurry of cars trying to position themselves to get the best shots. It had been 2 hours of driving through dusty terrain, but it was worth the effort. While we were out tracking pug marks of pachydums and getting excited by elephant excrement, the crew comprising of Hardy, Chantal and Murray had been busy prepping a braai. Lovely day in Brandberg, and I'm here with a juicy lamb chop which has been made on the braai over there. Like how we have pakoda and sandwiches, grilled vegetable sandwiches that we cook up in a jiffy. In southern Africa, it's a braai. In Afrikaans, braai means barbecue, and similar to India, where not much reason is needed to prepare chai, in southern Africa, that is the case with braai. The crew had stocked up on lamb chops in Swakopmund. They'd seasoned these with a spice mix. Every Afrikaner has a masala mix that is a closely guarded secret. Delicious. Saying goodbye to the superb staff at the White Lady Lodge, we continued north, heading towards the Abahuab Valley, also in Damaraland. Our destination, Twifontine, at the head of this valley, was just 120 kilometers away. So on this day, we could stop for a leisurely bush-style lunch. This meant making jaffles on hot coals. Much like the tasty toasted delights our roadside sandwichwalas make, jaffles are toasties stuffed with cheese, tomatoes and meat that have been grilled over hot coals. Twifontine, with its solitary diesel dispenser, can be described as the Sand People's three-dimensional analog Instagram page reaching back to hallowed antiquity. To date, over 2,500 engravings have been discovered on more than 200 stones. Some of these are about 10,000 years old. Which means that the Sand People were posting pictures and stories here even before the dawn of the Indus Valley civilization. This is why today Twifontine is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it is a fascinating place to visit. Similar to the White Lady Lodge, the Twifontine Country Lodge was also a very pleasant surprise with its lavish luxury plumb in the middle of miles of desolate desert. In fact, I wish we'd stayed here longer than just overnight. We forayed further into northern Namibia, heading through Damara land to Kauko land. We have stopped just now because over there, there's a giraffe. He's standing there and there goes a little springbok past him. Some giraffes ran away, but some bold ones stood their ground and regarded us curiously through their dainty eyelashes, twirling their trumpet-like ears in our direction. Driving through the riverbed whose terrain was fesh, a term given to very fine sand, the Scorpio sand mode was a boon. Let's see how it goes. Right now we're just going for the drive to put the car through its paces to see how it handles sand and this soft fesh sand. Seems to be handling it very well just now. In fact, all I have to do is just change it into sand mode. I go from normal mode to sand mode, which is one anti-clockwise turn on the dial. And what that does is that it adjusts the throttle response accordingly, and it switches off, it puts into 4-wheel high, and it switches off traction control. So that gives you better control on this loose sand, this really fine soft sand. The tented accommodation at Khoarib was all very rustic, but it did take some getting used to after being spoiled by the luxury of Brandberg and Twifontine. During the one day that we spent here, we ventured into Kauko land, past Twifontine, and for the first time came across women from the Himba tribe, and also one of the lone men of Kauko land. The latter is a series of lifelike structures made out of local stone that have been popping up in Kauko land over the past decade. The artist and the location of all the sculptures is a bit of an enigma, and the proper protocol is that if you come across one, then keep the location to yourself. So it would be incorrect etiquette for me to divulge where we had lunch in this lone man's company. Twifontine is the furthest north we ventured before turning back. We went off the gravel and onto the tarmac again at Kamanyab, a small village with 6,000 inhabitants, mostly indigenous. At the Opikopi rest camp where we stayed for the night, there was a resident ostrich, and I couldn't quite figure out whether it was friendly or furious. About 5 kilometers east on the tarmac C40 from the village's main junction is Piet Albert's Kopie. It was a bit of a climb to get here, but quite worth the hike since here too there is a profusion of prehistoric rock art. Some of them really well preserved, considering that they are at least 1,000 years old. We drove on south, crossing and celebrating at the Tropic of Capricorn along the way. The last highlight in Namibia was the tremendous Fish River Canyon that is actually a canyon within a canyon. The outer canyon formed 2 billion years ago, and the inner one cracked open 1.5 billion years later. Standing at the edge of this geological phenomenon that is 500 million years old at its youngest, my mind was warping at the magnitude of scale and time. And on the evening of that day, we crossed the border with smiles and waves and drove back into South Africa. We overnighted at the Uberboss River Camp that is superbly set on the banks of the Orange River. Here you can kayak, canoe or just sit by the Orange River and soak in spectacular sunsets. It was a fitting finale to Mahindra Adventure's authentic Namibia expedition. What did some of the guests think of this jolly jamboree in this dusty and desolate land with dramatic landscapes and fascinating contrasts?
So this was my very first personal experience, and the country is beautiful. My dad tells Spiti is the most beautiful thing he has seen. But for me, the most beautiful thing I've seen is Namibia.
Namibia stirs my emotion more than most places in the world. The rugged beauty of the place, the fact that there's so few people in such a vast country, and the landscapes. It's unlike anything other. There's nothing else like that in the world, according to me.
Because when we first started, at least when I first started the journey, I had no expectations. So when you go without expectations and you come across something that is far beyond anything you've ever imagined, it's amazing. The vast expanses of sky, mountains, desert, the different terrain, the long roads that you can drive on. This is the true meaning of a long drive.
What did you think about the food in Namibia?
Fantastic. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, if it's a meat lover's paradise. If you enjoy meat, this is the place where you need to come.
And how was it seeing Namibia with Mahindra Adventure?
Country great, and the way, as usual, Mahindra Adventure has set the bar so high that only they can do it better than themselves, and nobody else can ever do expeditions like this. So the best way to see Namibia is with Mahindra Adventure. They are the best, period.
Whatever he's saying is correct. Actually, it was really, every day was a new experience, and we had a wonderful journey.
And what do you think about the Scorpio N?
You don't drive the car drives you. In the toughest of terrains, it pulls you through without anything. So that is a plus point. All the controls are on the steering wheel. Again, for a woman, plus point. Your tire pressure, how far you have to go, cruise control. The cruise control worked so well. You could just put your feet down, chill, and drive.
So it's unbelievable. This car is an all-rounder. It is a daily drive, it is a tourer, it is an explorer, it is an off-roader, and you can do all this with all comfort, and it's got all the bells and whistles. What else can you ask for in a car?